Are there areas of deep, sustained collaboration across partners, and what stands out as the biggest area of progress?
I think we are really fortunate here that education, social care and health partners do collaborate together. We have really good working relationships. I think the SEND board helps to bring everybody together and to share common agendas. So at the moment, I think there is a strategic direction of travel for all of us that's pretty similar in terms of wanting to work more in neighbourhoods and localities and really build the support around school clusters. So I think the SEND board's really helpful for bringing us together to think about those shared agendas. I guess something else that strikes me is within health we are having there's a major reorganisation of our assessment pathways around neurodivergence, and we're being really well supported by colleagues in social care and education to think about how we put those changes into place really collaboratively and to work together to think about how we meet the needs of children in Manchester as a collective rather than as separate organisations. So I've seen, I think there's a real appetite for change to do that, and I think in health I feel really well supported by my education colleagues with that.
Have you got a particular example of a service or programme that has helped settings to build their own capacity and identify and support needs earlier?
So we've put together our local inclusion support offer, our LISO, this year, which has been really, really successful. Our starting point for that was trying to identify what we already had. So we looked at what offers were there for the schools already in terms of the support available to them, and tried to bring that all into one place and created and navigating the LISO document, which went through the universal, targeted and specialist support that was available. Off the back of that, we built a training calendar. Again, there was already a really good training offer to our schools in Manchester, but it wasn't necessarily in one place. So some of the training offered by health services, for instance, were emailed out in September, and some of the offers that we, as a local authority and the education team offered, we sent out on a termly basis, and then speech and language would send out a different communication. So there's lots and lots on offer, but it wasn't always in a centralised place. So we put together the training calendar, and that was really, really well received by our schools. We introduced that in the co-production meeting as well, so that the Parent Carer Forum were aware of the LISO and what we want parents to be proactive in having conversations with schools around what training and what support schools are accessing. I think we're on version 2 at the moment, but to make it a truly inclusive offer, we want to start thinking how health, education and social care can provide a better offer for parents as well. So I think that's probably the next evolution of it is what we can offer to our families as well as our schools. It's very much school facing at the moment, but I know the way we work in Manchester and the way we want to work is to ensure that families get that wraparound support as well. So it's still developing and it's still evolving, but I'm really proud of what we've done so far, and I think there's a real opportunity to develop something that can ensure that schools have access to the right support when they need it, and that kind of phased support as well. So training for everyone within the setting, not just our SENCOs, but our teaching assistants, our lunchtime supervisors, our other adults that might be working within the school. And then if they need that additional support, working more directly with the school, and then that kind of finely targeted support, which we do have to provide as well from time to time, either working more directly with individuals and families. But yeah, the next step or evolution of it, for me, is how we can involve parents and carers more in that.
Yeah, and we'll be keen to be involved in that, as we always are. I think it's been really helpful for all of the different teams as well to know what each other are doing. So there's less duplication of work. If there's already a workshop out there, then teams know that they don't need to develop on themselves.
And I think that's been really enlightening from when we've collected the calendars together, how often that is happening. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it does mean that we're creating extra work which could be being used better to provide other support. So, and that is one of the big challenges of it, because we are working across multidisciplinary teams. So trying to schedule training and co-produce them calendars so that we aren't getting them clashes is difficult. But again, because we're going through that process and because we're starting to see where maybe health and education can collaborate more to provide joined up training, I think we'll provide a better offer for our schools and our families.
Yeah, I think us knowing what's on offer and who's doing what and what's being developed has been useful as well, because we've been able to join people up as well. So if we've seen 2 projects that seem to be really well aligned, we've been able to introduce those 2 people together to then kind of co-create things, and I think that really strengthens the offer then.
And I think, we've talked a lot about PINs, but the model for that has fed into some of the other training we've offered, isn't it? Where now we're trying to get parent carer voice, or young person's voice within that training, which maybe previously we wouldn't have thought about. So I know some of the work we're looking at with social care at the moment is very much around how the parent carer forum can contribute to the training and develop that training so that our social care staff messages are aligned to our school messages.
For me, success would be, you can feel it, it's the culture changing, it's settings in schools are more inclusive, children are feeling more included, and it's, it's not just around SEND, it's around all our children, young people, with the focus being on SEND and AP. And I think working on the change programme in the last 3 years, you can feel changing. It doesn't change overnight, but you can certainly feel from education, from health and care, that join up and all trying to achieve the same goal, which is working together for Manchester, which starts at the top.
And it's been fantastic to go and visit some of our schools that have set up the new SEND units, the new inclusion bases, and hear how that's added to the inclusion of an already very inclusive school, and how parents feel so amazed that they're able to take all their children to the same school, they're able to walk their children to school rather than have one child having to be on a bus to their local special school, still within their community, but a bus ride away, whereas their siblings are going to their nearest mainstream. So it's brilliant to hear how it's changing the lives of families and then see those young people in the classrooms really thriving.
Another thing, at the start of this programme, there was a big focus on improving confidence and trust of families, and I think that has been something that in Manchester I feel we try to do across the board, and obviously there's a way to go, and I think with the white paper and things like that, it's another step to get over, but just constantly try to keep those relationships and have those open, honest communication with our families, children and young people, which will help us in seeing that success.
How do you know if you're being successful with enabling inclusion?
We know we've been successful when our children and young people are receiving the right support in the right place at the right time, and needs are being identified a lot earlier. We know when we hear from our families, from our parents and carers, that their children feel included, that they have that sense of belonging, and they are attending schools and feeling much happier, healthier, safer, and able to gain independence. You'll also be able to, you'll feel it, you'll see it, and you'll hear it. You'll hear it from families that things are working for them. So I think ultimately that's when you'll know that you've been successful. So how have you harnessed the experience and expertise of parents, carers and or children and young people to shape and drive key changes And what have been the challenges in doing that?
I think, just to steal your point that you're going to come to, but having people around the table and being part of the conversation is really helpful. And sometimes with health, we don't always work as effectively with education and with parents and with social care as we could. And I feel as part of some of these projects, we've had things like PINS and PINS projects in schools and the ND pathway, huge changes to that. And it's good to have other people involved in that discussion who can talk to you about how it's working in real terms for parents, how it's working for other professionals. There are challenges because we work differently and we all have different priorities. And even sometimes as parent carers, you have a different priority to your own child. And I think it's really important that you remind health professionals and that you have points of contacts like myself. I don't always have the answer. Sometimes I come out with more questions, but actually having the information and being able to discuss that is really important. And I think the Parent Carer Forum in Manchester definitely hold us to account, and they'll tell us when we've done a good job, but equally you'll tell us when we need to do better. And I think that's been really helpful, having regular drop-in appointments, knowing that I've got points of contact to share information with, but there's definitely been some challenges as well. And I don't know if you want to talk about the challenges from your side.
Yeah, I think with every big change like that, there's always going to be a lot of worried people. And then that's what we're trying to support all of our parents and carers and families in Manchester, but we also want to still be in those meetings and around the table, be a part of that. I think what's been a bit challenging for us recently is trying to convey that yes, we have been in those meetings about the pathway changes, and it is co-production, but that doesn't mean that everybody in the meeting has kind of agreed with everything that's happening. So with co-production, yeah, it has been happening. Have I agreed with everything in every room? Absolutely not. I'm sure you've heard what I've not agreed with. But it's still really important that parent carers are represented in those rooms. And where we've not agreed, there's still been a conversation about, okay, well, we can't do it completely another way, but how can we make it better than maybe what it would have been without those conversations?
And I think from a health point of view, some of those changes that have happened and are still happening as part of the ND pathway, it's still changing, there's still things getting put into, getting sort of finalised and happening properly, getting the processes in place and shared. I think it's been really important for you to pick us up on that. But sometimes there's things where we know what we're trying to achieve, but we don't know how to get there. And if we know that there's a change coming and there might be a gap in something, it's been really helpful for parents to say, well, actually, there is going to be a gap here, but we can get support from there, or for education to come in, or social care, and say, well, if health can't support this, or a change in the way they support that, that works with this offer that we've got. So we're thinking about the whole system instead of just what we're changing and what we're doing in health. And it's not, if it's not for the better, you can come and, as you often do, hold your hand up and go, that's not going to work for people. And we do try our best to listen, but obviously there's lots of restrictions on things and funding and systems, and that's not always great, but we can work around that and look to do things better, hopefully, for parents. It's just nice having you there a lot of the time, because you think of things that we don't, and we'll come up with an idea that we think is great, and you'll go, well, hang on, half the population can't access that because they don't have a laptop, or they're not going to be able to get to that clinic in that specific place, and we wouldn't have thought of that. So that's really helpful for us.
Yeah, I think with the pathway changes as well, as soon as we found out about it, we asked for engagement sessions, and straight away it was yes. So then we've had people from CAMS who've been in the room then with our wider members to explain, I suppose, a lot of the changes, even though we don't know exactly how they'll be yet, but explain that there are changes coming up and this is the direction that it's going in, even though the details are not there yet. And then to give those families space to then say what they would like to see. Hopefully we'll get quite a lot of those things done. Obviously we won't have 100% of it, but I think even just families being asked, they're not all going to be happy about it. As a parent, maybe I'm not happy about it, but I understand that it's going to happen regardless, so it's how can we make the best of the changes.
Yeah. One of the challenges that I found as well is trying to make sure that we engage and do co-production with children and young people as well. And I know that's definitely something that I need to get better at, and we need to get better at in health, because sometimes the voice of the child and young person is lost, and then we're starting to try and do more around transitions and focusing around young people as they're moving into adulthood, because they'll suddenly be expected to have a voice. So we need to make sure that we get better at encouraging children and young people to have that voice, because it can be really difficult sometimes if people have got communication needs or they find it difficult to understand. And also obviously there's lots of safeguarding and consent issues around getting children, taking them out of school to do these things. But that's definitely something that's been challenging for us, and having the parent voice is often really helpful. It's not the same as the child voice, but it helps us think about that and reminds us that we need to get children involved more.
And that's something that we've really tried to work on with the PINS project as well. When we've been going into schools, I've been asking parents and carers, you know, what are school really good at? What do they need some more support around? And we also ask the schools the same question. But then we've been doing lots of work this year as well with the children and young people. Well, we did last year as well, but I think we've expanded on that even more. We've strengthened it this year. So we've had groups of neurodivergent children doing sensory walkarounds in the school to feedback to, like, whether it be the SENCO or whoever it is that's taking them around, what parts of school they really like, what they don't like and why, which is more important. And then we've asked the teachers and teaching assistants and the other staff to do the same thing, but not with the children. And then we've compared the two. And sometimes it's the same, sometimes there are differences. You know, people want things like a theme park installing sometimes. But a lot of it is around those sensory needs and the social needs and things. And then when we've gone back to school at a later date, we've seen some of these changes happening, which is really good. Because I think when you're working with children and young people, it's the same as when you're working with the adults, really. Even though we know that we won't get everything our own way, it's the conversations that are the important part. So, okay, yeah, you can't have a theme park in the playground, but we might be able to put, you know, some more equipment in, or do some sensory circuits or something that can be fun as well. So it's having those conversations and seeing where the importance is, and then seeing what you can do within your means.
Yeah, because I think the thing sometimes with health is you see it as this big massive organisation, and it can be a bit faceless, and we need to make sure that we make it local, we make it relevant, and it's not faceless, so you've got somebody to come to when you've got a question or something's not working.
Yeah, and I think the navigator role in Manchester's really helped with that lately, because when people have been getting in touch with the navigators, it's the same people consistently, and our main navigator is the parent carer herself. So she's not just doing a job, she's living that life as well. So she's got really, really rich knowledge of things that SEND families need locally and what they can access as well. So I think their role's been really key as well.
Yeah, and it's really good having people like that with that experience in post. Thanks.
How have you harnessed the experience and expertise of parent, carers and or children and young people to shape and drive key changes? What have been the challenges in doing that? Shall I write it? Oh no, because you can answer.
Okay, so in Manchester, co-production is at the heart of everything we do. All of our work is shaped by lived experience. And this is guided by the SEND Co-Production Charter, which was developed in partnership with parent carers, children, young people and partners. So parents and young people have been central in shaping inclusion across the city. We've worked side by side with parent carers to co-produce and co-deliver training and resources for schools. This includes ordinary available provision, SEND support in schools, the neurodiversity in education work, and resources for the social communication pathway. Young people's voices are equally important, and through youth-led social action projects, youth-led grant making, and voice projects, they've shaped how schools understand needs and support inclusion from a young person's perspective. Young people consistently talk about the importance of feeling safe, feeling understood and building friendships. The SEND community offer gives young people and their families a sense of belonging through accessible, welcoming activities designed with them, for them and in their local communities. Manchester has also placed family voice at the centre of national and local development, including the North West SENDAP Change Programme, our local strategic boards and regional, where parents sit on the steering group and have worked closely with us. There are challenges, of course. Reaching every community in a diverse city like Manchester is challenging, but this is where our Working Together group comes into its own. Chaired by the Parent Carer Forum, brings together a wide range of smaller support groups across communities to ensure as many voices as possible are heard. Making sure participation and engagement is accessible for all families is also a challenge. But our local offer is more than a website, and it includes many different ways to get involved, including drop-ins, social media and local parent champion groups. So by working side by side with families, parents, children, young people, we've strengthened our SEND system, making it more inclusive, more responsive and rooted in lived experience. And that partnership continues to drive our progress in Manchester.
Is there a strong sense across your local partnership of what inclusion means, and how has that been defined and shaped locally?
I think we've got a really strong shared understanding of inclusion in Manchester, and we have had for a really long time. I think we've got a real history on focusing on inclusion. For example, we developed our first inclusion strategy back in 2018, and that had a really strong focus on reducing permanent exclusion, and really at that like a reactive response. We're now just moving toward our third inclusion strategy redraft, and that really focuses on early identification and early intervention as well, and also on a mainstream inclusion.
And it's been informed by the work we've done through the Change Programme. Mm-hmm. So all the work around the AP 3-tier model is really feeding into that inclusion strategy. But as you say, it's how do we bring the support to the child at the earliest possible stage, and how do we equip all of our staff, not just in schools but across all of our services, to understand how to keep children included in mainstream and in services across the board. So our short breaks strategy is also an inclusion strategy. We're trying to take our services out into the community so that families have all services accessible to them without the need for plans or specialist support.
And linking up now as we're moving to kind of families first agenda, around how that links into family hubs, how we're ensuring that early identification and intervention is being brought into communities as well. So there is a real linking up across the reforms as well, I think, in how we're working. I think as well, because of the way we work with our schools, that's enabled us to have a real shared understanding across our schools of inclusion. So in Manchester, we don't differentiate between school type. So we work in a family of schools model, and all our schools have the same offer from us as a school QA and SEND service. So they receive, so whether you are a maintained school, an academy, you're part of a large academy trust, you're an independent school, a nursery, everybody has the same support offer from us. I think also because the SEND QA service is embedded within that service, it also means it's our core business, it's part of our core school improvement work that we do. And we support our mainstream settings through this.
And a lot of the work that we've done with schools and with families over the years to co-produce things like our ordinarily available provision document, our emotional barriers to school attendance toolkit, all of that means that everybody's voices are pulled in to
how we support everybody. So schools have got practical toolkits that they've contributed to, but they're also based on the family voice of what's working and what's not working, and how we can get inclusion to be as good as it can be in not just our schools but our earlier settings and our colleges as well.
Absolutely. And I think the fact that those documents and toolkits have been developed within our service, then we also have teams like the attendance team sit within our service. They've also got access to that wider school support. So they're having conversations about your attendance is, you've got issues around attendance, therefore have you looked at our emotional based school attendance toolkit? That you've got, I'm just going to pause and then you can cut. So everybody within our service knows about those toolkits and are able to signpost schools as well, or signpost schools to people within the SEND team who can give them further support as well.
How do you know if you're being successful with enabling inclusion? I think you know when you've been successful, when our children, young people and families are receiving the right support in the right place at the right time, and we are fulfilling our vision that your children are happy, healthy, safe, independent. It's those things, it's hearing back from our parent carer forums and constantly having those open conversations, not always about, the good, it's the good, the bad and the ugly, but it's about being on that same page, trying to reach the same goal.
Yeah, and I think when the conversations change. I think we've seen conversations shift from, particularly with schools, around how can we make adjustments for a child, how can we get the provision right around a child, instead of looking for options of a different place that child could attend. So I think really focusing on the support that we bring around, and I think we've perhaps done that as well by providing that support first and allowing schools to see that it is possible with support for a child to be successful in a mainstream setting. So an example being the AP 3-tier model, and the outreach support that has gone to schools through that has allowed schools to see that if they change the provision and change the way that adults work around a child can be successful. So I think we've seen a different conversation happening that we have strategically influenced really as well.
What role does governance and formal accountability play in co-creation and collaboration?
Okay, so governance and accountability are essential in making co-creation meaningful. In Manchester, governance structures such as the SENDAP AP board, the local offer review board and the Manchester Working Together group ensure co-production is embedded in formal decision making. They provide a clear framework for shared responsibility, enabling parents and carers, children and young people to influence policies, pathways and service improvements consistently. The SEND co-production charter sets shared expectations and behaviours for how we work together. Accountability is strengthened by parents sitting on key groups, including the North West SEND and AP Change Programme, the SEND and AP board, attending and presenting at scrutiny committees and chairing the local offer review board. Overall, governance supports transparency, continuity and effective collaboration that responds to lived experience.